or an accident waiting to happen.
Stephen A, hush your mouth, talking all that noise. You can hate all you want, but we still them boys. Dirty, dirty D, Texas where we stay at. We decide in order till you know that's where we play at. Hey, this year, this the payback. Yeah, we them Cowboys, and nah, we don't play that. Work, this is Cowboy Nation. Work, welcome to Cowboy Nation. Work, y'all can keep on hate. Work.
Cowboys Nation, Cowboys Nation, Cowboys Nation. Welcome to another episode of Defending the Boys. I am your boy D Will, and we got another football game going. Nobody probably cares, but I do, because it's Defending the Boys. We do want to talk about the Los Angeles Chargers and the Dallas Cowboys. They do play tomorrow. It don't take a lot to knock the Cowboys out of playoffs, for all intents and purposes. That could be done before they even play this game tomorrow, because if the Eagles win today, then the Cowboys have no chance of making it to the playoffs. So this game could absolutely not mean anything, but we're still going to talk about it. I just won't hold y'all up and talk about it for a very long time, right? But part of this conversation is really going to be a lot about what we know is going to go wrong or could go wrong tomorrow, and then how it actually can be solved so that we don't have the exact same issues next year. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to bring up Matt Eberflus anymore after this time that I am bringing him up, because we know that that's the number one thing that most people think needs to be done. So we'll leave that out because that's the obvious, right? So let's just talk about some of the other things involved in this game and how, we may be able to fix it so that next year we don't have the exact same issue. So from the offensive standpoint, the defense is probably the best thing going for the Chargers right now. That's what has them in the playoffs. Herbert isn't necessarily playing well, right? And neither is that offense, although they do have some pretty decent players. Their offense isn't playing that well. What is playing well is their defense. And what you saw last week was Patrick Mahomes running for his life because he has offensive line issues. And let's be honest, the Cowboys have offensive line issues as well. We have offensive tackle issues. I think we have a pretty strong guard, center guard combination. They're not perfect. I'm not saying nothing comes up the middle, but our tackle in pass defense, both tackles, are not the best. And Tyler Guyton does a much better job, but he's not exactly perfect either. And we're not going to, I don't believe that we have him this week either, which makes me wonder, like, we probably should have put him on a injured reserve list if we were going to still miss him for 4 games, but it didn't happen. And we got to live with what we have to live with. So that does leave the situation where you start to think about what can we do about the tackle situation. I'm sure Tyler Guyton will be there next year. You probably want to do something about Terrence Steele next year, which means either you're in free agency looking for a tackle, which I feel like is the best thing for us to do. If there is a decent offensive tackle in free agency, I think you ought to be able to go get him, because that is one of those positions, right, that you need somebody who can do the job, right? And going and get a rookie doesn't guarantee great. I mean, and we've done good. I know that's probably the Cowboys' issue, is that they've done decent in finding some very good offensive linemen in the drafts. I mean, everybody that you can think about, you can go back for years looking at who the Cowboys have drafted. I'm not saying they got everybody. I mean, Tyler Guyton is kind of hit or miss for me personally. He's doing much better. There was a time where he wasn't doing better, and some of that was probably coaching. But I just feel like from an offensive tackle standpoint in this situation, it would make a whole lot more sense to do that from free agency so that you can concentrate where the young guys really can show out. A young corner still has his speed, different things like that. He got a lot to learn. but he has an opportunity to come in. Siobhan Revel, even after his injury, played decent. I mean, yeah, he got beat a couple times, don't get me wrong, but if you look at his film as a whole, I mean, you'd probably still give him a B grade. He played as a decent cornerback. Every shot doesn't have to be an A+ Pro Bowler, but if we can get some good players on the team, and I think you can do that a lot easier if you're not unless you're doing a first round tackle. I mean, if there's a tackle you can get in the first round and miss out on everything else that we need on defense, that's the biggest reason why I want to do this in free agency, right? Is because I know that we need defensive players. So in the first round, I prefer them being able to go out and do that. So I don't know yet because we haven't looked, and we'll definitely go into free agency and who's available after the year so we can kind of get an idea of what makes sense. But I would say offensive tackle is where we should go for. The offense should still be able to, even with all that, even if we end up kicking field goals and different things like that. I talked about at the very beginning of the year that the Cowboys would be able to move down the field. And even when they're not having a good day, they would be able to get field goals because of our field goal kicker, who, by the way, had a horrible game last week too. But the offense was still able to put points on the board, enough points where in most games you would be able to win, if not for the fact that your defense is the worst in the league, right? So I don't think that we're going to have the biggest problem with our offense, even with those offensive tackles going out. I still feel like we'll get points, even if it's another field goal fest. We'll be able to put points on the board against this team. The problem really is on our defensive side of the ball. Again, I've already talked about the fact that San Diego's offense San Diego. I'm sorry. I know they're not in San Diego anymore. Los Angeles's offense isn't playing very well, but neither was JJ McCarthy. Neither was Russell Wilson. We literally allow anybody to come in and play at a Pro Bowl level because our defense is that bad. So that's really where the problem is I don't believe that we will be able to stop their offense. I think that this is going to be, I don't know if Amarion Hampton is going to be able to just run all over us. I think speed kills. That's what we saw in the Detroit game. But I think as a whole, we probably will be able to handle him. I could be totally wrong, right? And I think they're going to be missing one wide receiver. I think Q is out. He's a TCU Horned Frog, so I got a lot of love for him. And he didn't have the best first couple of years, but he's been doing pretty good this year. However, they still have, McConkey and a lot of other guys, plethora of guys that he can spread the ball around to, who are able to make plays. And what we've noticed about our defense is simply that, man, if you got somebody good, they're going to prove that they're good against us. And if you got somebody that's just kind of all right, he's going to have his best game against the Cowboys. Yes, some of that is because you get up to play America's team, but some of that is because America's team's defense sucks. So I think that's probably going to be our problem. I think that the Chargers is going to have their bounce back offensive game. And the only way that we'd be able to beat them is if we were literally very explosive on the offensive side of the ball. And it would be a situation where you'd probably need to score closer to 40 to win this game. And I don't think that we score 40 against this particular defense. It's probably a situation where we can get in the 30s, but probably not 40. And that's going to give us problems unless there's a miracle that happens in our defensive secondary or for our defense as a whole. So, we started to talk about that. I know we're getting ready to get into after they're mathematically eliminated, because I haven't done a lot of what happens next year type of posts until the Cowboys are mathematically eliminated. But I think we'll really start to try to figure out what's available. There's a lot of guys that will be talking about the draft, and I'll probably bring up a lot of what they talk about rather than trying to, sell myself as a draft expert. I'll send you the Vouch if you want a draft expert. What I'm going to be concentrating on in the offseason is going to be a little bit more about free agency. we don't have to talk about a lot of free agency most of the time because the Cowboys just don't move in free agency that much in previous years. But last year they did, and this year they did. And I'm going to have to assume that they're going to move in forward with the things that they've been doing over the last few months, 12 months or so, right? Assume that they're going to continue on that path and actually do some things in free agency. So I'm gonna be doing a big push on what's available in free agency and what the Cowboys actually should be able to do out of free agency. Again, I will be bringing up some stuff. I will have my own draft board and different things like that, but I'm probably going to concentrate a little bit more on the free agency side of it. But what do the Cowboys need on defense? No, the answer is not everything. But they do need to get rid of Kenneth Murray. We need better linebacker play from somebody to go with Overshawn. We probably need at least a cornerback, and we need a safety. I mean, we literally need everything except for defensive line. And we could definitely use a certified pass rusher, although I believe that we will get better play out of Azaraku next year because it won't be his rookie year. He's learned a lot. He's done a lot better. I think that if we can have a better secondary and linebacker effort, that you'll actually see better play out of our edges as well, even the ones that we have right now. And then, like I said, we'll talk about where these guys, who we think is going to stay, who's going to go, and kind of play some games with those type of things as well. So I know that we can't continue with the secondary that we currently have. There's a lot of injuries. But I think next year there's going to be, some people that we want to talk about, from the Josh Butlers, Siobhan Revel being healthy and having a whole offseason to actually prepare. I think he's going to play a lot better. We obviously have no idea what's going on with Trayvon Diggs. I don't know where the disconnect is, because if the disconnect is with the ownership, then he's out of here. If it's with the defensive coordinator, and then they're bringing in somebody like an Al Harris, again, I'm just making up stuff, I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, then, do you see them keep Trayvon and then him have another one of those years like he did when he had a good defensive coach? So we'll kind of play some of those games, but I guess it'll be determined by whether or not Philadelphia loses and the Cowboys win, which means we got another week to still talk about. They're not out of the playoffs yet, right? Especially then, because then the Philadelphia would have to play the Bills, and all we would have left is the Commanders, who would have just beat the Eagles, so they won't be a pushover team either. And then the Giants, who we barely beat the first time. So it's going to be rough, obviously, to actually make it. I guess it's not impossible. If Philadelphia did find a way to lose this week, then there's a possibility they could lose in the last week as well. And you just never know. Don't count on it, though. All right, man, this has been Defending the Boys. I am your boy, D-Will, and I'm out. I'll holler at you guys.